Good morning. If you're watching this, then I suppose that means that our video cam experiment has worked. My name is Gareth Davies, and I'm Professor of European Law, and the Department of European Law is one of the three departments that is together offering this program in Transnational Legal Studies. The idea behind this program was that law today is used as an instrument of policy. We use it to try and solve problems and to achieve certain goals and to improve the quality of life. But many of the problems we want to solve are not national, but they're also not international in the classic legal sense. Traditional international law focuses on relationships between states. A lot of the problems that we're looking at today are just transnational, meaning they're problems that have no respect for borders. Environmental problems, terrorism, and of course the internet. Well, I don't like to call the internet a problem, but the internet is a phenomenon for which borders mean very little. Sometimes you hear politicians talking about the need to remove certain kinds of websites and certain kinds of speech from the internet. Sometimes they sound ridiculous. They speak as if they can decide what is on the internet in the Netherlands or what is on the internet in Britain or Germany. And of course, as anyone who uses the internet realizes, they can't. The internet is the first big structure which is used by everyone, which is accessible to everyone, and which straddles borders, for which borders are almost meaningless. So how do we deal with that? Ultimately, do we want an area of chaos and an area without law? Well, I mean, some people do. Some people believe that freedom is important. It is more important than regulation on the internet. Probably most people think that some kind of regulation is important, but that regulation is going to be of a new kind of form. We can't do it nationally, and simple treaties of a classical international law form aren't going to solve these problems either. We have to think about transnational governance, and that's what this first course, I think, Internet Governance, is going to be all about. And the second course that forms part of the program, Danger, Risk and Law in International Society, that's about many of the risks that we want our governments to protect ourselves from. Many scholars say, that these days the major function of government is protecting people from risk. Our lives in the rich world and the developed world are safer than they've ever been, and yet we're probably just as fearful as people have always been. The world may get safer, but then we find new things to be afraid of, and we're outraged if the government fails to protect us from environmental disasters, natural disasters, dangerous people, dangerous food, poisons, radiation, terrorism, you name it. We want our government to eliminate these risks. But of course, many of these risks and dangers are once again transnational. Tell a poison in the sea or in the air, or tell a terrorist that, well, you can't do that because that's a different jurisdiction. Jurisdictions just mean nothing for many of these problems and these issues. And so the second course explores how do we deal with danger and risk and law in international society. How do we work together to address these issues? How are these things used to achieve different goals? What's interesting about all these topics is that when you go outside the state, when you have agreements between states and international bodies and you create transnational organisations, they always have a very political context. They're always there to achieve a goal. They're always used for rhetorical purposes, for political purposes. They're always controversial. Is it democratic? Is it just? Is it a good goal? Is it all about rich states exercising power over poor states? That kind of thing. One of the ideas that I had behind that influenced me when thinking about these new courses was this. In the future, you can't be an effective lawyer if you don't understand the context of transnational legal phenomena. Some kinds of national law, you can just learn the rules and do your job. But for transnational law, it's so politically laden, it's so policy laden. If you don't understand where it comes from, what it's being used for, and what it means to different people, you won't understand how to interpret it. You won't understand how other people are going to interpret it and what its effects are going to be. And you'll end up just being a bad lawyer or a bad researcher. That's one of the reasons why we chose the word legal studies, not just transnational law. This is not just about learning the rules. It's about understanding where the rules come from, where they're going, what you can do with them, and what other people are doing with them. That's sometimes unexpected things, not just lawsuits, but using them for rhetorical, symbolical, political purposes. But those purposes can be important if they lead to changes. My department has a kind of minor role in these two courses. The first course is being run by the Department of IT and Law, logically, and the second course is being run by the Department of Public Law, International Law. And me or colleagues in the European Law Department will appear as guest lecturers doing bits on the European Union in both courses, and I hope to meet you at some point. But it's particularly interesting for me, I think, as a European lawyer, to look at transnational legal studies, because the EU is an example of a really transnational body. Yes, it's treaties, and treaties are classical international law instruments, but it's not just another international law organisation. It speaks to people, it's embedded and intertwined in national societies, and yet it goes beyond borders. It aims to dismantle borders. It shows little respect for borders. It tries to find, in an economic context and a constitutional context and many other contexts, it has environmental policies and social policies, it tries to find a working balance and a working system, crossing borders and yet not doing away with them more than people are prepared to tolerate. It tries to find a transnational form of governance for the future. And so thinking about transnational issues comes naturally to a European lawyer, and I'm interested to follow both of these courses, and I hope that you will find them interesting and challenging too, and that I'll meet you during the coming couple of months.
Dus een mailtje voor Wouter is wel geestig. Die net is hij gestopt?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I think it's still going.